This is Ben Rutkowski, local cinematographer here in Brooklyn. Today I had the honor of testing out the DZOFilm Vespid 2 lenses, brand new set of full frame prime spherical lenses that DZOFilm just came out with. And we just put them to the test. We did a bunch of different lens tests, and I'm really excited to show you our results. I am starting at close focus, which on the 18mm is 9 inches. My chip chart is 9 inches away, and I'm go from infinity back to the chip chart, and I'm noticing no focus breathing. Looking for breathing, looking for either contracting or expanding of field of view, but I'm really not noticing any. Close focus on this lens is 1 foot 8 inches. And yeah, I'm really not seeing any breathing. I'm not seeing any sort of contracting or expanding of the space. I'm looking at the background and I still see that light in the top right corner. It's still there. And then in the foreground, in terms of the amount of the chip chart that I see, it's about the same the entire time. Close focus and breathing test of the 85mm lens. This one has a close focus of 2 feet 5 inches, which is pretty good for an 85mm lens. Going to our foreground, now to the midground. I'm going to push to the background to see if there's any sort of breathing. And like every lens before it, other than the 24, I'm noticing no focus breathing. This is the 105mm lens. It has a close focus of 3 feet. Definitely critical focus is a little bit harder to nail when you're on a 105mm lens, but still sharp all the way through. The only lens that I did notice a little bit of breathing was on the 24mm lens, but everything that was longer than that, I didn't notice any sort of breathing. The thing that I'm most impressed about this set of lenses so far is the close focus capabilities, and especially this 35 that can focus within 12 inches is pretty good to have. So the next test is white balance or color cast. We're looking at the set of lenses and see if there's any sort of range in color temperature, color bias between them. We're trying to see if any of the focal lengths look warmer, cooler, more tinted green, more tinted magenta than the others. We're not going to be able to know definitively how much of a color bias there is until we get it into post and we specifically look at the neutral gray chip on the chart. But at least to my eye, what I noticed when I was looking at each test back to back is that the 24mm lens looked somewhat warmer than the other lenses, and the lenses seemed to cool down as the focal length increased. So something about this 24mm lens seems a little bit different than the rest of the set. Remember, the 24mm lens was also the only lens that I noticed any sort of breathing. I think I also noticed a little bit of chromatic aberration with that lens. So maybe it's just that in this set of lenses that was slightly detuned. But with this set of lenses, I'm seeing general consistency amongst them, but interestingly enough, the 24mm lens is reading slightly warmer than the rest of them. So for our last test, we're going to take the camera outside, so it's not going to be as controlled in as an environment as at our testing bay, but we're going to look at Jeff, our model, with each lens to see how the lens renders his face, what the shape looks like, what the bokeh looks like outside, and we're going to keep Jeff at a consistent field of view from us. We're just looking at the general shape of Jeff's face in medium close-up. He's 2 feet away. Looking for any other distortion. I am definitely noticing the same slight barrel distortion that we did when we were inside. A little bit of distortion, but nothing that crazy, nothing that you wouldn't expect from an 18mm lens. So now we got the 24mm. Jeff is about 2.5 feet away. Still noticing a little bit of distortion, a little bit of that barrel distortion with these wider lenses, but it's definitely not as significant as on the 18mm lens. Still, even at a 2.8, we haven't opened the lens all the way, but we have really nice fall off in the background. All right, this is our 35mm lens outdoors. Jeff is 3.5 feet away. So still maintaining that medium close-up on him. No more barrel distortion now that we're on the 35. His face is certainly flattening out. We're getting a little bit more fall off in the background as we get to these longer lenses. Jeff is now 5 feet away. Our field of view is definitely flattening out now. No distortion on Jeff's face. Really nice fall off to the background. So we are now on the 85mm lens at a 2.8. Jeff is 8.5 feet away. Great. So this is the 105. Jeff is 10.5 feet away. When you're considering what type of lens to rent, first thing you have to consider is, of course, what sensor size you're going to be shooting on. These are lenses that are becoming more and more common to actually rent and purchase, but they're more expensive than Super 35 lenses. So first thing that we're going to be considering is price point of a lens. These are pretty moderately priced. Form factor, they're really small, they're uniform in terms of size. Next thing that I'm considering when I'm deciding what set of lenses I'm going to be working with is, of course, going to be my aperture. These across the board open to a 1.9, which is great for low light. You're going to be able to get really nice shallow depth of field with all these lenses across the board. I'm also really interested in close focus. So these lenses have a really nice uniform close focus across the board. I think that the 18 has the closest. The lens that I liked the best in terms of close focus was actually the 35, which you could still focus up to 12 inches. I think what makes these lenses really appealing is that they all match each other for the most part. We did put them through a pretty wide array of tests. We did notice some exceptions to that. First test that we did was flaring. We noticed a pretty nice uniform warm flare across the board. In terms of glare or veiling, we only noticed that with the widest lenses, and as the lens focal length got longer, there was less glaring and veiling. They all had a very uniform, nice spot flare. Even got a nice sort of reddish orange ring flare with most of the lenses. A reasonable amount of ghost flaring, not the end of the world, and no eyelash flaring. So in terms of flaring across the whole set of lenses, what I like about them is that they do flare. There isn't so much coating in the housing that they're prevented from flaring, but they do flare in a very controlled way, which I liked a lot. Then we did a test of bokeh. So Straight off the bat, what we notice is that the bokeh is circular across the board. You can't see any sort of edges from the iris, so it looks like just perfect circles, concentric circles. We did notice a little bit of spherical aberration, especially on the longer lenses. And in terms of the blur highlight shape, which is whether the lens is over or under corrected for blur highlights, across the board, they were pretty much perfectly corrected. Geometric distortion. The 18 and the 24 millimeter lenses did have a slight bit of barrel distortion. Nothing crazy though, nothing that you wouldn't expect from very wide lenses on a full frame sensor. We didn't notice any sort of pincushion distortion on the longest lenses. Basically, as the focal length increased, you got less and less distortion. Vignetting. Notice the slightest amount of vignetting on the 18 millimeter lens. Again, normal vignetting on any lens in terms of the amount of illumination fall off and exposure on the sides is about 20%. Resolution and contrast. So on the resolution and contrast test, what we noticed is that all the lenses were perfectly sharp in the center of the lens, but as you open the lens to the full 1.9, we did notice a little bit of a softening of resolution on the sides and the corners of the lens, especially with the wider lenses. Then we did our close focus and breathing test. The lens that you can get the closest with is the 18 mil. You can get 9 inches away, which is awesome. Even the 105 millimeter lens, you can still shoot within 3 feet. And the lens that I think is sort of the perfect middle ground, Goldilocks lens in terms of close focus, is this 35 mil because you can get within 12 inches on it. In terms of breathing, I think the only lens that we noticed any breathing with at all was the 24 millimeter lens. It wasn't anything significant, it was just because we were looking for it, but you would only notice that amount of breathing if you were literally going from close focus to infinity. The last test that we did inside was the color cast test. I was surprised to see there was a little bit of color cast difference between the lenses. I think what I noticed was that the 24 millimeter lens actually was rendering the warmest, and as you got to the longer ends of the lenses, to the 105, the lenses started to cool down a little bit. Really the only one that to my eye I could notice a difference was the 24. So maybe there's just something going on with this particular 24 millimeter lens. But for the most part, across the board, these lenses matched in terms of white balance. We took the lenses outside. We just wanted to see how it would render a face in a medium close-up in a less controlled environment. Nothing that was surprising out there. We noticed the same slight distortion, barrel distortion on the 18 and the 24 millimeter lens. And as the lenses got longer, there was less distortion and more natural compression. So what I would say about the entire set of lenses is, if I was looking for a affordable full frame set of prime lenses, I would certainly consider them. I think the most important thing that you're looking for when you are looking for prime lenses for full frame especially, is that there is somewhat of a uniform package that you're getting. Because again, the last thing you want is sort of unpredictability as you're swapping lenses and suddenly you're getting different types of flaring, different types of distortion. I think from the 18 to the 105, these lenses really match well as a set. If you're looking for a ton of character, I don't think these are the lenses for you. But if you're looking at modern sets of lenses, it's pretty rare to find lenses with a lot of imperfections anyway. If you are looking for that type of lens, there's a whole other route that you can go. But in terms of sort of a clean, while not clinical look, I think that these DZOFilm Vespid 2s actually look really nice, and they are easy to work with for all of the reasons I previously mentioned. Whether you had any thoughts while you were watching these tests, or if you've taken these lenses out and tested them yourselves, let me know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to Adorama's Cinema channel. We're coming out with new sets of tests all the time, and have a great day.